I work with thousands of people in my coaching over so many years. In addition, I'm a big student of human behavior and how people think and feel. Between the 40s and the 80s, before the microchip, the biggest innovations were things like, self-correcting typewriters and the Hewlett-Packard calculators. Today, we literally don't know next year with AI what that's going to be. You actually have an anchor, you have values, you have a sense. You have a self and not just gyrating from one thing to another like on a treadmill. Doing this in remembrance to my mother who just passed away at the age of 105, believe it or not, this year. And, she got the highest award from the French government for her work in French literature at the age of 103. So if that's not inspiring, I don't know what is, but so I have wearing a touch of pink today in remembrance to her, and always be part of who I am and sort of what I'm about. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about the why of, why we're here, Julie, and why you asked me to, it's for us to start this series. I work with thousands of people in my coaching over so many years. And in addition, I'm a big student of human behavior and how people think and feel. So, I've been at business for a very long time and I've never experienced the need and passion for these types of conversations more than now. And there's a lot of reasons. One is the world that we live in, but also just the rate of change and what's surrounding us. People are finding it very difficult to have an anchor that's constant in their lives and for them to filter through their decisions, their behaviors, their interactions through those anchors like we used to have. I mean, just to give an example, if you think about the office technology, what the technology in the office space, between the 40s and the 80s, before the microchip, the biggest innovations were things like, self-correcting typewriters and the Hewlett-Packard calculators. And today, we literally don't know next year with AI what that's going to be. And so, but the leaders are still been oriented and grounded in being the person that has all the answers and, has that executive presence and knows where to go and what to do all the time. So there are lots of questions that are constantly on people's mind. What I'm hearing is I feel like an imposter. I feel incomplete. I feel fragmented. There are parts of me where I feel I'm in flow, but I don't exercise. I don't know where they are anymore. I'm living someone else's life. And I'm expected to be someone that I can't really relate to. So all of these are sort of this disconnection from, um, the essence of who we are. And, in various traditions, they call it different things. Called the seat of consciousness. It's called the self, the Buddha self, the Atman in the Hindu. Um, in the Christian tradition is when Jesus says, in the world, but not of the world. So we can go on and on, but there's this self, the seat of consciousness. So when Julie says, there you go again, you did it again, who's speaking? Which one of you is speaking? That's the one. So the idea is how do we bring that in your daily lives so that when you make decisions, especially when it has so much consequence for so many people, you actually have an anchor, you have values, you have a sense, you have a self, and not just gyrating from one thing to another like on a treadmill. So it's not the uniform or the role that you're playing, like you're the host of this podcast and I'm the speaker, but you're so much bigger than that and being connected to all of you with that adult in the room that's managing all those selves. That's sort of what I'm hearing is the thirst, is the need. And so a great indicator of that is what's happened on LinkedIn. This is something that everybody can relate to. So, 7 to 10 years ago, the emphasis on LinkedIn was largely on the left side of the brain, was about competition, domination, external recognition, trophies. Look at us, we're the greatest company. Here's the book we just wrote. You should all read it. Um, you know, um, I'm looking for a job. We have a job. Here's my tribe, the greatest tribe in the world. If you're one of us, here's how you join. It was those types of conversations. Today, if you go in, there's a much more of a balance. There's much more focus on learning, growth, especially through vulnerability and not knowing, and experimentation. There's a lot more emphasis on connection, evolving evolution through connection with others. So, so there's themes like here's my story, my personal story, and what is yours. Here are the mistakes I made, and learn what are yours. Um, there's things about here's a portrait in servant leadership. Here's a portrait in resilience and courage. So it's much more of what we can all relate to as human beings through our essence, not just through the uniform or the role that we're playing. Um, and so you ask, well, so what? Why is that even important? Well, what I'm noticing is that people are, especially at a certain point in their lives, and I imagine a lot of our, folks on this call are in that point. Otherwise, they wouldn't be joining us. You get to a situation where you feel more unfulfilled, not as much on flow, somewhat might express some depression. There's all the loneliness is a big thing, being disconnected from others. And then there's addictive behavior, whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's sleep issues, eating disorders. And and then at the extreme, so there's a range. At the extreme now, you get to a point where your soul can't take the imposter anymore, and it rebels and sabotages your life. So you actually will do things to change your life because one side of your brain has kept that side in exile. It just doesn't allow it to have a breath, a life. And we've experienced situations where we acted out because our soul just does not want to continue with that routine. So that's what the big emphasis is in having these types of conversations. So to set the scene, I don't know, maybe our audience can have a thumbs up or something where I know how many are actually watching this. There's a new show on somewhat new on Apple TV called Severance, and it's got multiple layers. One is the plot, but there's full of symbolism and metaphors and so far that those of us that are in corporate lives can really relate to. And it is sort of a perfect illustration of the fragmentation. It's a marriage of convenience between employees who are trying to leave parts of their lives out by not remembering that part when they go to work. So they actually have a brain surgery, a brain procedure where when they go to work, they don't remember that part of their lives. And a company called Lumen, who's a conglomerate that's trying to do all this hush hush stuff, they don't want publicized and they don't want people to remember when they leave work. So that's how the two get together. The problem is that once these characters actually enter this world of Lumen, they feel like there's something missing. There's something of them missing. And now they're trying to search for what's missing. And one of them actually is the daughter of the CEO who's volunteered herself as a champion for Severance. And she becomes the biggest rebel, wanting to connect back to her real self. And so she tries to hang herself, she tries to cut her fingers to get out. And, obviously the organizers, the people watching don't want that. So they get her, so the people working are referred to as the innies, and the people that are the real selves outside are called the outies. So they get a tape made of her outie talking to her saying, don't ever do that again. I want you to stay there. I don't want you to come back and connect with me. And if you ever cut your fingers or anything like that, I will never forgive you. So how many of us, for example, have said, listen, just put your head down. This is your lot in life. Stop fantasizing. Stop being that. Just do your job, right? How many of you have experienced that? Exactly. And so the rest of the story is really a plot by these employees to get back and connect with their outies, and they're somewhat successful. And now the outies and the innies are getting connected, and all kinds of problems are coming up for the organization, who's trying to keep them. And this, again, another area where we can relate to. So they're asking questions like, well, what's the mission of this organization, and how do I fit in, and how is what I'm doing making any difference, and all of that. And they don't want any of those questions. They don't want them to talk to other departments in the organization. They want them fragmented and segmented because that's the way to control. That's the way to get the job done. It's the most efficient way. It's not necessarily the most fulfilling or holistic way of doing your work. So the rest of the plot is for them to get back to who they really were. And so that's sort of um, symbolically setting up what we're going to talk about. Now, I'm going to give you some real life examples of people I've worked in my coaching that have gone through that, and how I deal with that or how I work with that. But if you haven't seen the show, watch it. And also, when you watch the show, don't just be stuck at the plot level of trying to understand. See what the symbolism, because it's done by Ben Stiller, who you all know, and it's very deep in terms of what he's trying to say, especially for people that are working in organizations that have become fragmented from their essence.
I
And
was frightened and scared and depressed the whole time I was watching it, Kaveh. It was,
yeah,
it was, it was just, and then I went to bed and I was creeped out even more because these people that have agreed willingly to give up their souls was very like
yeah,
scary and like almost too real. It hit a
exactly,
little too close to home.
exactly. But if you think about when they did it, all of them came, except for the exception of the daughter of the CEO. They did it through fear.
Well, I didn't see all the episodes, so don't give everything away to
But
everyone
you'll
yet,
see
Kaveh.
the reason, but they're
Yes.
all there's some sort of a fear or denial that's fueling them cutting off
Yes.
their
Well,
essence, part of their seat of consciousness, in order to put their head down. And if you see the kind of work they're giving them, this not mind-numbing, repetitive, number-driven stuff where they don't see any purpose. They don't see the end product. They don't understand the value. They can't get connected to their own values and so forth. And they're doing it because of fear.
yeah.
And
And we do it because of responsibility and fear, I guess. But there's a big when I'm listening to you talk, Kaveh, I hear and I see this word responsibility.
yeah, but underneath responsibility, what are you responsible for? Well, I need to feed my kids. I got a mortgage. Again, there's a fear under that is what happens if I don't have this?
Yep.
So, which again, that's what's fueling it. Now, nobody's saying, and I'm going to get to this in these cases, I'm calling it the back burner strategy. I'm going to go through that of how you have to be realistic with life and not kill that. It's an and, not an or. We're going to go through that. But the genesis of the split is because of these things that you are either in the denial or don't want to, or you're insecure about, and that sort of thing. So I'm going to put a concept, a construct out there for everyone to think about. When I work with in the coaching, I come from a holistic point of view about the brain, which has to do with the fact that the brain is a system that has many voices, many players, and they're all in their own rights are trying to do the right thing for you. It's just that the adult in the room, the self, is not in charge. And so one of them has your ear and is shouting in your ear and drowning out everybody else. So, as a good hostess, for example, in a dinner party or a host, your job is to introduce them to all the other ones of you and see which one you want at the time appropriately. So, there's a great book on this. It's by Richard Schwartz and Martha Sweeney. It's called the Internal Family Systems Therapy. And they divide up these voices into exiles, the ones you don't want to come out, like in the show, that have been exiled. And then the protectors are the managers and the firefighters that are constantly working to keep you safe and secure. So, in order for you to get whole, you have to get permission from these protectors to experiment and to bring back some of you without them feeling like you're going to be in danger. It's a negotiation. So, what we do in the coaching is we negotiate. We don't overwhelm them. We don't tell them to go away. I don't want you. You're not good for me. We say, I recognize your service. Know you want the best thing for me. And could we also hear from these other ones or from the self? So I'm going to give you examples of that in these cases these are real coaches and how we negotiate and we work with this back burner strategy. So let's take case number one. This is a person who knows going to be asked to become a CEO of an organization. She has worked her entire life tirelessly to get to this point. I'm noticing, because as a coach, your job is not just to listen to what they're saying, right? So you got to take the whole thing in. I'm noticing like this swan-like thing where above the waterline, calm, collected, what they call executive presence stuff. I'm looking at the feet and they're flapping like you would see a swan or a duck under the waterline. And I just add, what's going on with the feet? Which is in coaching, we call these trailheads. This is the head of a trail that's going to take you to some very meaningful and deeper stuff. And she starts to share that her body is very much reacting to her becoming a CEO. She's having sleep problems, having a tremendous amount of stress, and it's affecting her mood, her presence. Her body is rebelling against this upcoming decision.
Hmm.
And so that's the body. The head comes from an immigrant family where women were seconded. She, through sheer perseverance, has gotten herself to this point. How to go back and tell the family, for example, that she doesn't want to become the CEO. She feels the weight of being a role model for other women. How to say, I don't want this. How all these people that have supported her and are counting on her to win this race and are thinking that they're going to be rewarded and, that they were on her camp or her abandoning them in some sense. And she didn't have tremendous respect for the contenders, who she didn't think were as qualified. So the back burner strategy now is we're not going to make the decision right away. We're just going to keep that feeling in you alive. We're going to amplify it until you can vision yourself so strongly that you are then able to put yourself in that place of most possibilities and go to what you need to do. But we're not ready yet. We're just going to keep that alive. So we kept working with that until the day came where she was asked. And by then she had a whole other sense of herself as wanting to do a lot more of the nonprofit type work, you know. And for example, taking formularies that didn't hit the economic hurdles of pharmaceuticals in the Western world into developing worlds and working with those formularies in those countries. She hadn't figured out all the hows, but she knew that was her destiny. So this is one on the spectrum where we didn't know exactly what the mousetrap was. The next one is a head of HR who had, like you, had grown up in the food and restaurant business, actually see herself in that world, but wanted to use her current position as a way to facilitate that even more. So she, through her position, was able to get connected with the procurement group. She found out all there was to know about, how they give contracts on for events, for large event, outsourcing of the food and catering and all of that. What would win contracts, all of that. So eventually, she was able to get herself out with all that knowledge, put herself in. She first got those types of things, and then through that, got her restaurant going because she had the income coming in even before she put the restaurant up. So this is where you put yourself, the back burner, you keep it alive, you put yourself eventually there, and by putting yourself there, all kinds of things start to open up for you. And then the last example I'll give is someone that was a very talented entertainer, musician, singer, entertainer, whose creative side had been blocked by a lot of people saying, when are you going to get out of this airy fairy world and get a real job? How many people can relate to that? And she actually, in a coaching session, was able to sing a song from one of her favorite plays that she had performed, and that brought back a lot of that to her. She was depressed about being a waitress, started seeing the waitressing job as a rung in the ladder, not an end all in itself, because now she could see herself as that next person. And she transferred all of her skills from acting into being the best waitress you ever had. Her tips quadrupled, probably. And she used that as a way to get to where she was going. I'm going to stop there. I think we've given enough examples and fuels to this concept and see what comes back from the audience in terms of those three questions that we put up there, which is, what are some stories in your life where if you had to go back to again, with your whole self, how would you look at it? What's the learning now? How would you talk to it? Which one of you would show up? And how would you manage yourself now?
All very good questions, Kaveh. You know what I wish though? I wish I could go back to my younger self and talk to her right now, like knowing what I know.
And what would you ask?
What would I ask her or what would I tell her?
Well, first of all, which one of you would show up?
The real version of me would show up.
Which is,
Like the version I am now would show
okay.
up.
And so, what would you do? What would you ask? How would you talk to that one?
I would I would ask my younger self to really think deeply about who she really was. Because as you were telling, as you were talking, and I was thinking about Severance, I was thinking about all the things I did to literally sabotage my career because I wasn't playing by the rules of their game. And I wanted to play my own game. And I wanted to live my own true purpose. And so there's all these different time points that I'm remembering. One time, I'll never forget this story, Kave. There was a chance for us to teach something. We were at a subject matter expert training program, and they said, teach anything you want. And I decided I was going to teach the group what it means to have a purpose. That was the one thing I wanted to teach, beginning with the end in mind from the 7 habits of highly effective people. I wanted to teach the lesson, begin with the end in mind. And I thought, wow, I'm going to finally get to teach something that I really feel that is so important to me. And I think it should be important to everybody. This was around 2010-ish. Well, I was brought into my director's office and I was scolded because I taught this lesson. And
Mm,
she's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I was told I could teach anything I wanted. And this is what I taught. This is what I wanted to teach people." And she's like, "Not here."
right. Yeah,
And it was just like one of those moments. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And then what was so cool is that after COVID, we were allowed to talk about purpose. We were allowed to talk about it because I actually watched a girl do a presentation where she gave the actual clinical benefits of us having a deeper purpose. That it was good for our health, it was good for our mental well being, and all of these things. And I was so excited because I'm like, finally, I get to talk about something that has
right,
been burning inside of me for all of these years.
right, right. Exactly. So, because part of the reason is people are worried and scared, like in the show, that this is not realistic. This is not the real world. And nobody, look, we all been in business for a long time. I got to put food on the table part. But that doesn't mean you kill the other one. It just means that as you go through life, if you keep it alive, you start to seeing the connections. You start seeing the opportunities. You start connecting with the right people. You put the
Yep,
right messages out. And so you build your way to that thing. When you kill it by saying go away, then what you did is you basically killed your soul,
you did.
living somebody else's life.
And that's where everyone gets sick and the burnout comes and the mental illness and mental health problems, all of it. You can't kill part of yourself.
Exactly.
Thank you, Kaveh. And thanks everybody